think we are just about ready to start. And yeah, so welcome to our latest tech series webinar. And today we're going to be talking about migrating to Pro, how, why, and when you should do it. So first of all, my name is Nikita Sobolev, and I shall take you through the webinar today. We've also got Rosie Gardner helping us out with your Q&A, and Ben Flanagan will be joining us too. Now, as a little bit of housekeeping, as you all know, this webinar is being recorded, and the link will be shared in a follow-up email. And that same follow-up email is going to contain a lot of very useful links to some resources that I advise you to take a look at. We will have a Q&A at the end, but feel free to submit your questions at any time in the Teams chat, and we will answer them after I've finished. So let's take a look at where we've been to understand where we're going. Some of you may know that ArcMap was released in 1999 at version 8.0, and it was accompanied all the way by its companion apps such as ArcCatalog, ArcScene, and ArcGlobe. Altogether, they worked to give you a full spectrum of GIS capabilities. And 2020 saw the latest release of ArcMap 10.8. And at the same time, since 2015, we've had a different app going that is called ArcGIS Pro, and that has had all of its components, all of the ArcMap components baked into a single piece of software. And since 2015, it has undergone a lot of development. There have been significant changes, and 2022 saw the release of ArcGIS Pro 3.0. So why migrate now? For some people, the biggest overriding factor is the fact that ArcMap is going to be supported only until 2026. 10.8.2 was its last release, and from now on there will just be technical support. There will no longer be any development. And for those of you who are on ArcGIS Enterprise, it is important to note that ArcGIS Enterprise 11.0 will no longer have an ArcMap-based runtime. So it will only work with ArcGIS Pro. But personally, for me, if I'm honest, I switched over to ArcGIS Pro several years ago because it has much faster geoprocessing. It has a 64-bit architecture, and it has now got access to all of the RAM on your machine, not just the 8 gigabytes of RAM that ArcMap used to have. And that speeds up the geoprocessing, but it also improves the stability of the program that you're using. So ArcGIS Pro doesn't crash very easily. And of course, migrating now will allow you to run these in parallel. So you can still work in ArcMap, but you can learn and you can plan and you can migrate at your own pace. Although, if I'm honest, it's if you have the option, it is a really good thing to just delete ArcMap altogether and work through ArcGIS Pro, because jumping in head first sometimes is the best method to learn. Now let's take a look at the interface. And first of all, at number 1, you will see a ribbon. It is a very familiar ribbon to all of you, and it is something that you've all seen in Microsoft Office apps. You will have all seen this in AutoCAD apps. So everything really uses the same ribbon interface. So you're switching from a familiar interface to a familiar interface. At number 2, we've got the Project tab. That Project tab will contain all of your settings. At number 3, you will see that you've got, well, at the moment, it's a map. But at the same time, that area will also contain your layouts. That area will contain your global and local scenes. If you wanted to open up a catalog pane, that's going to appear there. And at number 4, we've got the contents pane, which hasn't really had much of a change, except that where you used to have multiple different data frames, you now have just the one single map. And if you've got any extra data frames, they will appear as a separate map with their own contents pane. Makes it a little tidier. And again, at number 5, we've got the attribute table. And again, the attribute table hasn't had a huge amount of changes, but what has changed significantly is the way that we manage fields and the way that we manage domains. It has been an absolute godsend, and I advise you to try it. And yeah, at number 6, we've got the catalog pane. As you can see, it's baked into Pro. It's not a standalone app like we used to have it in ArcMap. But if you needed to open up the catalog to have it as a data management area, you can open it up within that pane at number 3, and that will open up a big window right there for you. And finally, we've got the command search. You'll all be used to the search in the geoprocessing tools, but the command search works alongside that to look for tools, for commands, and it's very useful because if you're migrating, it just saves you looking for something separately. Now then, within this interface, we also have an ArcGIS Pro Learning Resources tab as well. And when you open up a new project, you will see this page open. And it has a lot of useful panes like the quick start tutorials and the discovery paths, but also we've got a coming from ArcMap section. This will help you import an ArcMap document. This will help you migrate to ArcGIS Pro with a special guide, and it's got a lot of documentation for ArcMap users. Now, moving on to the benefits of Pro, the first benefit is data management. When you open up Pro, the first thing that you will be asked is whether you want to create a new project. Everything is managed in projects now, and when you open one up, it will give you an option of where you want to save it. It will give you a name for that project, and this is what will be created wherever you decide to save it. You will see that you've got an APRX. That is the replacement for an MXD. We now work in Pro projects in an APRX format, but at the same time, you still have your default geodatabase that's created for you, and that's a standard format, as well as a toolbox that is specific to your project if you've got your own tools. And we've got a few extra folders for housekeeping, let's call it that. But also, in the settings, you can choose how you want everything to open. You can choose whether you want Pro to open at the start page or a project template. You can choose where to save projects by default or in a custom location if you wanted to. You can set geodatabases for a single project, or you can have a default for all of them. And same goes for toolboxes. So, as you can see, this is what will happen in the catalog pane when you open up an ArcGIS Pro project. And within the folders section, we've got a home folder. That's your folder where everything is saved. You can connect other folders, as you can see, data demonstrations, temp. They are things that you might need to visit. But unlike ArcMap, we no longer have a cluttered catalog pane within your projects because we are no longer immediately connected to absolutely all of the folders you've ever connected to in your life. And yet at the same time, if you've got folders that you return to again and again, they can all be saved in the favorites tab right there at the top. And that will take you, that will be taken across all of the projects. Now, when we're talking about visualization, we've got far more powerful visualization tools. In 2D, you can leverage smart mapping, which understands your data type and allows you to create on-the-fly heat maps. It will allow you to gain insights from your data through dynamic clustering of points or visualizing data as time-enabled, and all of that can be done automatically without you needing to manually do it. And then we've got 3D animations as well, 3D visualization. And in the examples, it can leverage scenes as a global or a local view. And you can visualize very realistic representations, including 3D meshes, IFC, and Revit files. And they can be used to show floor-aware mapping of buildings or infrastructure, as well as 4D mapping with voxel animations. It's a really useful aspect as well that we've got 3D symbology now, which can provide you much more engaging and insightful map. And then let's talk a little bit about integration. Integrating generally with Portal is much simpler. If you've got an Eagle or a Portal connection, they are all done through the catalog, through the project pane within your ArcGIS Pro. You can switch between them easily. You can connect as many as you need, and it's literally a 3-click without needing to change from, without needing to close your APRX and open it up again. So with direct access to your portal, you can access, your own content, your organizations or specific groups. You can bring them into Pro and leverage the rich analytical tools we have in Pro, but it's still hosted in your portal, and thus it still provides the one single source of truth. And also, you can enrich your portals by accessing the Living Atlas. This is a curated catalog of content, and it has a lot of data from demographics to high-resolution base maps. And if you take a look at this example, this is an example of CAD integration because we're bringing in Revit files from the Autodesk world by plugins with BIM 360 and ACC. And once you've completed your work, you can share all of your work through the Share tab, and that allows you to do a lot of things. It guides you through how you want to share it. And in this case, we've got an example of a web scene. And you can share scenes or layers, or you can share vector tile layers, web elevation layers, and the share ribbon will just guide you through it. And once you've hosted it in the cloud, it doesn't just provide the single source of truth, but it also improves drawing and performance. And yeah, ArcGIS Pro is generally a more comprehensive suite of tools. You've got enhanced geoprocessing tools, additional things like business analytics, spatial analytics, and geoanalytics, but also even some of the more common tools have gotten a little bit of an upgrade. There are more capabilities for visualizing your project for stakeholders, as in we've got dynamic reports, we can have multiple layouts, and we can have interactive charts. And if you're looking at big data, we've got support for 3 cloud data warehouses, Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, and Snowflake, so you can start taking slices of your data into Pro. And for those of you who can program, who like to do programming, you will be used to probably using notebooks, which is a very common thing, as well as the Python window. And we've got notebooks that are now integrated into ArcGIS Pro. Now, there have been questions about system requirements. There have been concerns raised. I've seen that in your questions. So first of all, if you want to check how suitable your system is for the ArcGIS Pro migration, you can go on the system requirements page, which has a utility that you can download, and you can run a test check, and then that will run a check on your machine, and it will give you all the information you need about how much hardware capacity you have. And technically, I have seen this being a bit of a concern that some of you just don't have the hardware capacity. Technically, it is possible to run ArcGIS Pro on a weaker machine than the minimum recommended hardware settings. However, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. It's definitely not to be recommended. And covering licensing, if you have an existing license for ArcGIS Desktop, that means you will have an ArcGIS Pro license as well, if it's all active and in maintenance. Typically, it will be a named user license, and that'll be associated with your AGOL or enterprise account. And your license will be activated as soon as you log into Pro. If you like licensing locked to a machine, there is a license manager, and it can take you through a single-use license or a concurrent use license. Everything can be converted through your portal. Now, there are people who have used Citrix previously with ArcMap, and it is still possible to use Citrix with ArcGIS Pro, but there are some constraints. I would advise checking the pages, the support pages on that, and looking for your answers there. And finally, we're talking about managing ArcGIS Server and managing Portal with ArcGIS Pro. If you've got an enterprise portal, that's fantastic. You can use ArcGIS Pro seamlessly with it. It integrates really well, and you can share all sorts on it. And when you share something through Pro, it's an enriched form of publishing. You're not just publishing the service that you want to do. You're not just publishing the layer or maps. There are also files that are associated with them that are created as additional information, and it just helps everything run much more smoothly. If you run ArcGIS Server without federating it with Portal, that's still possible. And you can still directly publish to services and sites running ArcGIS Server 10.6 and later. And you can still add services from a standalone server site into ArcGIS Pro, but there are some limitations with that. And finally, we've got some learning resources for you, where I'll never just abandon you like that. And we've got, first of all, the Migration to ArcGIS Pro resource in general. That is our page. But we also have the user conference videos for getting the best out of ArcGIS Pro. We've got documentation on ArcGIS Pro help. And also, we've got a wonderful Esri community that will help you and probably answer your questions that you might have that will come up. So thank you very much. And this is the end of the presentation. But before we fully dive into our Q&A, a lot of the questions that we've had that have come in that concerned a lot of migration questions from ArcMap that are quite practical, and I think we could benefit from seeing a little bit of a demonstration. So on my screen here, you can see a standard ArcMap document as you would normally have created it. We've got data here. This is all made up data, and we want to move this into ArcGIS Pro. So how would we do it? Within ArcGIS Pro, you will see, when you open up ArcGIS Pro, you will see this page here, and you've got the standard how you want to open something up. You can open up a catalog to start something, to start your data management side of things. You can open up a map, and that will all take you to a creation of a project, as I showed you before. But we also have an option to start without a template, if that's something that you want. And I find that's really useful for just checking what data you were sent. And it's a very simple thing to do, and it creates temporary files. Everything that you work with, if you don't save all of this, it will all be deleted as soon as you close Pro. And if you wanted to import an ArcMap document, just go into Import Layout File, because then that will import your layouts as well. So as you can see, we've got that MXD there that I just showed you, and all you need to do is just click Import. Now what this will do is it will import the MXD with the layout, with the settings, with the data, and as you can see, there is a minor change in the legend, but overall we're looking at the same layouts, at the same everything. And then if you wanted to open it up as a map, all you have to do is open that map, and there it is. So we've got the map and we've got the layout. There were questions about creating default maps, default layouts, and using them as templates. And what you can do is you can just save this as a map file, and that will be then created. That will then create a map file, and you can save that map file in the right folder settings to then make it an actual template. And the same goes for a layout file as well. So for example, if you're running a big project that has to have the same layout template every time, you can save that, you can create that template, you can save that, and that will be applicable to, for example, that project only. And if you wanted to add data or add folders or anything like that, you can see that we are now no longer within quite a constricted file structure. We now have your full access to Portal, your standard project folders that are connected already to the project, or your whole computer. You can choose to copy and paste a link maybe to somewhere on the network, and that will take you there, and it will allow you to add things. So that will be all for me for the quick demonstration. And now let's take a look at your questions. Okay, Rosie, would you like to start?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nikita. And thanks everyone for all the questions and comments been coming in. We've had some questions that came in prior as well when you signed up to the webinar, so we want to kind of cover off as many as possible in the next 8 minutes on that. So we'll pick as many as we can do in that time. And yeah, Nikita and Ben are here to help as well. So just the first one that came up in the list is looking at or asking the perception that ArcMap users might find Pro quite complicated. And if so, kind of what would our advice be for that? What are the options? So I think it's true. I think it's, you know, as Nikita has been showing, it looks very different in some ways to what people who've used ArcMap for many years might be used to. But I think the thing to say is that although it's a new interface to get used to quite initially, I suppose, it has been a lot of effort and research has been put into it to make it as intuitive as possible, but also to make it as performant and navigable as possible. So with those ribbons along the top, the idea that the tools that you need kind of when you need them and are accessible are all in one interface over there, and then geoprocessing and catalog and everything is all included within Pro now. You don't have to jump out to different windows and that kind of thing. So I would reiterate the advice of kind of giving it a go and kind of not using ArcMap for maybe a week and just using Pro, and you'll be surprised how quickly you get used to all the functionality that is still there, just in a slightly different location. So that's that question. We had a question come in about are there viable alternatives to ArcMap for representing ArcScan in Pro? So in 2.4, pixel editor tools were added into that one. So these have been replacing those tools within ArcScan for ArcMap. So worth having a Google as to the requirements or the capabilities that are available in the pixel editor tools. But yeah, do let us know. We're constantly developing the tools, and we listen to all the ideas that come in, and these get added in later releases. Looking through.
I was seeing that questions are coming in about IT issues, some such as the hardware. So as I've mentioned, technically you can run ArcGIS Pro without a dedicated graphics card, but performance will be reduced, and that is something to be aware of. And depending on how processing heavy you're making it, it can be reduced to a point where your quality of life is reduced. So I wouldn't recommend it, but it is possible. And if you've got severe issues, it might be worth giving it a try now before you have no choice. And also, I saw questions about IT not approving the software package to install ArcGIS Pro, and it is a concern for IT. But where previously every update of ArcMap was a separate executable file that would have to be checked and approved by IT, ArcGIS Pro now has a built-in update process. So once you've made that leap, once you've managed to get ArcGIS Pro installed and approved, then the further updates are done almost within the program itself, so that you don't have to wait for IT to approve every new version that's coming out. So while there is that hurdle initially, further on, it will help remove hurdles.
Cool, thanks, Nikita. And then one around licensing models. So the nature of Pro, and as we can see in the chat, everyone kind of uses it slightly differently and licenses it slightly differently. But there's a useful survey if you're unsure of what direction to go down, then that can help guide you through the process. And what I'd say is either have a look at that survey, I've just put it in the chat there, or we can kind of, after this webinar, get in touch with us and we can kind of work on a case-by-case basis to try and help with that licensing, just because it's so broad as to how different organizations find it most useful to license for each other.
I guess, Rosie, on that one, just to add that, you know, the default with ArcGIS Pro is a named user licensing model. So if people are already using ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise, you'll be familiar with name users, and that is the default for Pro. But there are, as Rosie says, some different options depending on the way you purchase Pro. So if you purchase Pro as a standalone application or through a package, then name user will be the default. But if you choose to purchase it through the desktop suite, there is the option then to convert that name user into a single use or concurrent license. So there are very different, lots of different patterns, which will depend on your needs and your organization's requirements. And that's something that the survey that Rosie just posted will help with, and we're on hand to help with the best approach to. But it's worth remembering that the default is name users.
Cool, thanks, Ben. And just a couple more, one around the roadmap. So I'm sure quite a few people are thinking about what's coming in Pro, what are the updates. So again, with each release, there's release notes. So we're just being released on Pro 3.0. And with that, there's a release notes of what's come into that version of Pro, but also they then release what's in the roadmap, short, medium, and long term. So again, here's a link in the chat as to where you can go to find that resource. But again, it's a useful one to keep monitoring, because every time a release comes out, that'll be updated as to what's coming in the future. Anyone else helping monitor anything coming in? Trying to...
I think also, did we mention representations? Because I've seen questions come in about representations. So there are representation rules in ArcGIS Pro, and they can be combined with attribute-driven symbology. And there is a link that we're going to send you out in the follow-up email that will help you work out exactly what you need to do with representations.
There's a question that's just come in about integration with SharePoint and Teams. I guess we'd need to know a bit more about the question and what's meant by that. But there are tools to work with ArcGIS content in both SharePoint and Teams now, with ArcGIS for Teams, not just for SharePoint. So there are ways to collaborate with people through those applications, but I guess that's slightly different to Pro. But yeah, if you got some more information, we can follow up on that one.
I think it's worth saying, just as we are now at time, that all these questions are being logged. So with each user, we will have, based on your registration, we can get in touch with you and answer those questions as well, because conscious there's a lot of you on this webinar. So be assured that we will get back in touch as to the answers to your questions. But I think that's probably a wrap for now. We're at 11:30. Thank you ever so much for everyone who has joined. It's been really great to have your comments and thoughts in the chat there as well. And Jenny has posted to the start of the chat a survey form, which will get emailed around as well. So it'd be great to have your thoughts and feedback as we kind of continue to do these webinars in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice day.